So regarding the central administration building, which is on the proposed list that we have here on this sheet, just a few questions here, and if you don't have them off the top of your head, I mean, you got it till obviously we could get them before next week.
Yep.
But I was interested. One is, so it says here specifically on the information sheet that we would move central CNI, curriculum and instruction, and the special ed department to central office, and they're currently at Live Oak. Correct.
CNI is currently at Live Oak. SPED is currently the Montgomery building, which is next to Kyle Elementary.
Next to Kyle Elementary. Okay. So would this new administration building only house those two departments, or would they house other departments too, like HR, finance, or executive offices, for example?
It would be all of them. So the general plan right now, and of course this would be something that the board would look at through the design phase, construction documents. Y'all still would approve all of that should this go to a bond and should it pass. But it would be basically where the buses used to park at the central office location where we're at. It would be about a two-story building. That's in the draft design right now. It would be a two-story additional building back there. And we would save the current central office building, probably the location for SPED or some other department there. And then the former transportation building that's on the I-35 side, that building is salvageable and could be gutted and replaced, and that could be an office. So there would be kind of those three buildings making the compound. We would take out the current technology building and all those portables and some of the older metal buildings that are just in bad shape, particularly for technology. They don't have any of the modern fire suppression or data security, flooding. So we're just hoping that the squirrels don't get in there and chew up our servers.
So how many square feet are we looking at? And I think that may be something that you provided the committee already, and I maybe had neglected to see that.
Max has our architects drafting up a large sort of line-by-line presentation on the projects, and each of them are going to delineate the different costs for different sections and parts, and I think it has a square footage, but you may know off the top of your head.
Yes, sir. We're looking at probably 60,000 square feet of new and about 15 or 17,000 square feet of renovation.
We will, by the end of this week, am I correct, that we'll have, as soon as possible, that presentation
Yes.
that you can review over the weekend and then into Monday for Tuesday's meeting. And it's going to be similar in the sense that it's a slide for the major projects, or maybe all of them. All of them, but it's going to have more detail, like not just the total cost, but it'll break out the different parts of the cost. So you'll have a lot more detail on each of the projects under consideration.
That's right. And so the 24th, this Friday, is the drop dead date for those submissions to come in. We'll provide those to y'all in advance of that meeting. And then if anything changes over the weekend, which I don't anticipate it, but if it were to, then we would provide an updated document on Tuesday or Monday if we can get it to you by Monday.
Excellent. So could I characterize then this administration building that this would be like a one-shot deal where if we were to, as it's currently conceptualized, that all the central administration would be located within that building or the other buildings that would be renovated? Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, sir. That's the goal, to get everybody in one place.
Okay. That one of the reasons I was asking that is a few people in the community had asked me if we were doing this administration building in phases, would this only be for, because I had seen on the document online that they mentioned specifically CNI and SPED. And so kind of their assumption that they were making was that it was only housing those departments. And so they were thinking that maybe what we were trying to do is phase this. But from what y'all are telling me, the conceptualization is that this would be a one-shot deal for the whole central administration. It wouldn't be coming back in pieces for stuff later.
And I'm gonna expand the explanation on the reason we pulled, really the main reason that we pulled out the CNI part is because this ties in with the Live Oak expansion. In order to expand Live Oak, which is the third item on that, the one right above it, we have to move CNI out of there so that we can, because we have 140 kids on the waiting list for Live Oak. So that's why CNI was on my mind. Then I was thinking, we had talked so much about bringing the big, those are the two major departments that are sort of away from the central administration now. So bringing both them home, but also, yeah, it would be a new place for everybody. So I'm going to expand the language on that. That's a good point. I didn't realize yet. If you going back and reading it through that lens right now, it looks like we're just doing a couple of departments.
Dr. Sanchez?
Yeah, I just have one question. The site for the new central building, which is the old transportation location, I know it's been a transportation location for a long time, and places like that tend to accumulate toxic materials and fuel spills and all that kind of stuff. Are you guys going to do like a environmental study before you start breaking ground to consider whether or not you might have to move soil out and replace soil, things of that nature?
We thought about it, but it's just for administrators. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Fortunately, at that site, and I hear what you're saying, at that particular site, it's above ground storage fuel tanks, so we're good with the soil. But if there's some kind of indication as we move forward that we need some additional remediation or testing, we'd absolutely have that done. But the tanks are above ground tanks, so there's no evidence. You can see if there's a spill, and that's one of the reasons above ground tanks are so good.
And so let's say maybe 25 years ago there was a big spill that we know nothing about. How would you identify that? I guess it'd be obvious in the sense that you'll see this contaminated ground.
Not necessarily, and sometimes folks that can do things to cover things up like that, and so there's something called an environmental site assessment, and so there's different ways people can go and look at different old insurance maps and old aerial photographs and do a reconnaissance that way. So there's ways to figure out what the use has been, what the particular dangers might have been or are, and we can go forward if there's an indication that there's something wrong.
Is that something you're going to do automatically, or
as we go through and design the project? If it appears that we need to do some sampling, we will. I don't think that would be something we would just do automatically and just start taking samples. But if there's an indication that there might be something wrong, we absolutely will.
And then something of that nature wouldn't necessarily drive up the cost of the project, like.
If there's some sort of a remediation that has to occur, that would be an expense that's not accounted for right now.
Okay. So how do you mitigate that risk?
Well, we could either put in an additional environmental contingency, or that would be my recommendation, is some type of a contingency for potential environmental risk.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Savoy and Mr. Cleaver. That is our bond